The United States didn't inherit slavery from anybody. We created it. It got created by the Virginia General Assembly and the legislatures of other states. It got created by the court systems in colonial America and since that enforced fugitive slave laws. We created it, and we created it and maintained it over centuries. And in my lifetime, we have finally stopped some of those practices, but we've never gone back to undo it. Stopping racist practices at year 350 of 400 years, but then taking no effort to dismantle them is not the same as truly combating racism.
This is the kind of either historical inaccuracy or really perhaps you could just say historically misleading stuff that so very clearly describes so much of the left's view of these things now. To say that we did not inherit slavery, it seems to suggest, and to say that we created slavery in America is historical ignorance, the likes of which it's stunning that Tim Kaine could utter on the floor of Congress and not think that he's a total moron. Slavery, as anybody who has ever read the Bible knows, has existed for really as long as human history has existed. Slavery is something that existed in many European countries well up into the early 19th century. If you want to read of the most horrific exploitation of slaves and slavery, perhaps of the entire colonial period, it would be a case that you could make, certainly in the European context, that it was the Belgians and the Belgian Congo. I mean, there's the depravity and the horrific, and who would, the Belgians don't all walk around all the time apologizing for their legacy or their history of slavery. But what they did in the Belgian Congo is horrific beyond words, and it really was a genocide. And yet there's no historical context given for statements like this that Tim Kaine makes, that we created slavery. Almost like Americans are uniquely guilty, historically speaking, right? Slavery's been gone for 150 years now. But historically speaking, we are uniquely guilty of that institution, and that's just not true. It's just not true. There has been slavery practiced in societies all over the world. In fact, there was a very interesting fact check done of the kente cloth shawl, scarf, whatever you want to call it, that Pelosi and all the different members of Congress have been wearing in a show of just absurd pandering, of course. But like Nancy Pelosi feels a real kinship to this kingdom in Ghana, historical kingdom in Ghana. But it turns out that the dynasty most associated with kente cloth was involved in the African slave trade by enslaving Africans and selling them to Europeans. Time magazine did this fact check. I'm just telling you. I think it was Time magazine, but this fact check is out there. So, there was slavery practice in Africa at the same time that the European slave trade was exploiting the existence of a slave trade in Africa, where some kingdoms and some tribes were enslaving others. I've told you extensively on this show about the Muslim African slave trade of white Christians that went into the millions. Again, in the 1600s, into the 1700s, stretching back even into the 1500s. This has been around, and now this is not, it's horrible. It's like saying, genocide is bad. It's like saying, racism is bad. I mean, these are universal truths. Slavery is bad. Of course, it is evil. Slavery is bad and evil. Genocide is bad and evil. Abortion is bad and evil. But our society will come to terms with that one another day. But can we at least have some historical context for statements like this by Tim Kaine? No, of course not. Better to seem woke for the senator. Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.